They laughed when she walked into the karate class, but 2 minutes later, she had the loudest one flat on his back. They say first impressions are everything, but when Thelma Grant pushed open the glass doors of the Peachtree Recreation Center in Macon, Georgia, nobody saw her. Not really. They saw a short, elderly woman with silver-streaked hair tucked under a velvet head wrap, a pastel windbreaker zipped to the top, and white sneakers that squeaked with every step on the polished gym floor. The class was already in motion. About 20 people stood in rows, all dressed in matching white G's, belts tied around their waists. Most of them younger men, a few women, a couple of teenagers. The instructor, a wiry man in his early 30s with a goatee and a loud voice, was pacing along the front line, shouting out combos in Korean and clapping his hands. Everyone moved in sync. Thelma didn't flinch. She adjusted her glasses, looked around the room calmly, and stepped to the side of the mat, careful not to interrupt. That's when the glances began. The instructor paused. "Ma'am," he said, straining a polite tone, "you here to see someone?" She smiled, slow and steady. "No, I'm here for the 6 o'clock class." There was a short pause, the kind that sits in the air a second too long. A few of the students exchanged glances. A boy in the back smirked and whispered something to the girl beside him. She covered her mouth to keep from laughing. "Right," the instructor said, nodding. "You must be new. You sure you're in the right place? This is a beginner to intermediate sparring class." Thelma looked up at him, unfazed. "I know what class it is. And no, I'm not new." He blinked. "You've trained before?" "Little bit," she said. That was all she gave him. He hesitated. "All right. You got a GI?" "No, I didn't think I'd need one for the first night back. Thought I'd see how you run things first." A teenage boy near the front row whispered, loud enough to carry, "She looked like she about to teach yoga, not throw punches." The room chuckled, low and cruel. Thelma heard it. Of course she did, but her face didn't twitch, not even a little. Instead, she sat down quietly on the wooden bench by the mirrored wall, pulled off her windbreaker, and began stretching her shoulders, one slow circle at a time. One of the younger instructors, barely in his 20s, walked over crouching beside her. "Need some help with stretches, ma'am? Some of these moves can be hard on the joints." She turned and looked at him. "You ever do double roundhouse kicks from a horse stance, baby?" He blinked. "Didn't think so," she said, and went back to stretching. He got up and walked off without saying another word, but even then, no one really looked at her. They saw wrinkles and assumed weakness. They saw gray hair and thought, fragile. The idea that this woman, this grandmother-looking stranger, could belong in the same space as them, let alone be better, didn't cross a single mind in that room. And that was fine by her. She had no need to prove anything to anyone. Not yet. But someone was about to get bold, and that's when everything started to change. The class moved on like Thelma wasn't even there. The lead instructor, Devin, barked out a new drill, this one focusing on sparring combinations. "Partner up," he called, clapping his hands twice. "Light contact only. Work on precision, not power." Students paired off quickly. The same boy who'd whispered earlier, tall, lanky, with a brown belt and a cocky swing in his step, stood with his arms crossed, looking around like he was above all of it. His name, stitched on his GI, read Jaden Reyes. "You need a partner?" asked a younger girl, maybe 16, eyes bright. Jaden barely looked at her. "I ain't trying to hit a kid." He scanned the room, and for a moment, his eyes landed on Thelma, who was now doing toe touches like time didn't exist. "Bet Grandma wants to try," he mumbled. The girl giggled. Devin called out again, "If you don't have a partner, shadow the drill." Thelma stood up and dusted off her pants. "I'll just shadow," she said quietly. Jaden, loud enough for a few others to hear, muttered, "Shadow? More like nap time." Another round of chuckles. But this time, one of the instructors, the younger one from earlier, glanced sideways at him. Thelma didn't even glance his way. Instead, she started mimicking the movements the others were doing. Her form was slower, deliberate, but her footing, clean. Her hands, centered. Her posture, balanced. If anyone had been watching closely, they'd have noticed something. But they weren't watching. They were too busy whispering, snickering. Some were on their phones between drills. Someone even took a quick photo of Thelma mid-stretch, then buried their face in their hoodie, laughing. It wasn't just ageism. It was ego, too. This was their space, their territory, and she didn't fit. Devon called for the next drill. Kumaiti posture, controlled strikes, one-step format. The room got into stance. Jaden was still partnerless. Guess I'll sit this one out, he announced, loud enough for attention. Thelma stepped forward. I'll go with him, she said calmly. The whole room turned. Devon looked unsure. You sure? This is a partner sparring drill. No contact, just movement and positioning. I said I'll go with him, she repeated. Jaden looked at her with the same expression someone might give an expired milk carton. You sure? I might break your hip, he said, half joking. She looked him in the eye. Try. A couple of his friends let out quiet oohs like middle schoolers hyping up a hallway fight. Devon clapped once. All right then, let's keep it respectful. The pair squared off. Jaden barely got into stance. He stood loose, lazy. On my count, Devon said. Ichi! Jaden stepped in with a quick jab toward her shoulder. Soft, playful. Thelma didn't move, but her eyes locked on him like a hawk tracking a rabbit. Knee! Jaden stepped in again, this time a low sweeping motion with his leg. Again, slow, taunting. Still, she didn't move, just pivoted gently out of the way. He smirked. Come on, you gonna throw something or... Before he could finish, she stepped in with a short, sharp move, just a reposition of her stance, and tapped the side of his gi. A clean strike. Perfect form. Jaden stumbled backward. The whole class blinked. It was just a tap, but the way she moved, swift, sudden, without warning, changed the air. No one laughed. Jaden's jaw tightened. You got lucky, he said under his breath. Thelma didn't respond. She reset her stance. San, Devon called. Jaden came in quicker this time. Not playful now, annoyed. He aimed a palm strike just near her shoulder. She stepped in before he even completed the move. Closed the space, pivoted, swept one foot behind his, and gently pushed. Jaden hit the mat. Gasps. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic. It was controlled, technical, effortless. Jaden scrambled up, red in the face. You tripped me! Thelma didn't flinch. You fell. Someone near the back whispered, Wait, who is she? But Jaden wasn't done, and what came next would make sure no one in that room ever forgot her again. Jaden didn't like being embarrassed, not in front of an audience, especially not by someone he hadn't sized up as a threat. He dusted off his GI, trying to play it cool, but his eyes were narrow now, and the bounce in his step had turned stiff. The instructor, Devon, called for a short water break. Students scattered to grab bottles, stretch, or chat in hushed tones. Thelma stepped aside and leaned against the wall, arms folded. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't mad either, just present. Jaden strutted over, bottle in hand. That sweep you did? He said, voice low. You got lucky. Don't get used to that. She looked at him calmly. Boy, I've forgotten more about control than you've ever learned. Jaden scoffed. You talk like you invented the place. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned her head slightly and looked at the long row of windows along the far wall. The late sun was casting gold across the mat, and for a moment, she wasn't in that room anymore. She was on a different floor, in a different country. A dusty Okinawan dojo in 1984, heat rising off the concrete. Her teacher, Old Master Ryota, circling her as she balanced on one leg, sweat soaking her uniform. No rush, he'd always say. The slower you move, the more control you learn. The more control you learn, the less you need to fight. That lesson never left her, and neither did the bruises, the discipline, or the respect she earned being one of the only black women in that entire dojo. They hadn't wanted her there at first either, but she showed up every week until they stopped laughing. She blinked. The room came back into focus. Macon, Georgia, the gym, the sideways glances, and Jaden still standing there, fidgeting like he wanted another round. Respect is earned, right? He said with a smirk. You ain't earned it yet, she replied, eyes steady. He turned and walked off, muttering something under his breath. From across the room, one of the teen girls, quiet, braided hair, purple belt, approached Thelma timidly. Excuse me, ma'am, she said. That move you did, the sweep, was that from Shotokan? Thelma looked at her. Close. It's a variation from Goju Ryu. You practice? A little. I've only been coming for a year, still learning. Well, Thelma said, nodding. You're doing just fine. The girl smiled, small and genuine, but behind them, two boys whispered again. Bet she probably watched some YouTube videos or something. Man, she don't even got a GI. Thelma heard it. She always heard it. But she'd made a promise to herself years ago. After Harold died, and after she stopped training to take care of him, she promised if she ever came back, it wouldn't be to prove anything to anybody. It would be to stay sharp. For her. For the girl she used to be, and for the woman she still was. And if some young bloods thought they were funny, well, that wasn't her problem. Until they made it her problem. Devin clapped again. All right, folks, pair up one more time. We're doing light sparring. Half speed. Controlled energy. Jaden was back in the middle of the room, already glancing toward Thelma. He wanted another go. This time, it wouldn't be a joke. She knew it. And she could feel the shift in the room, too. The giggles were fading. The whispers were quieter. A few eyes were watching her, not laughing now, curious, uncertain. She glanced down at her hands, knuckles still calloused, even after all these years. Her left wrist popped softly as she rolled it. She turned to Devin. You still got those extra gloves in the back? She asked. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. Yeah, you planning on sparring? She looked across the room at Jaden, who was bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, cocky again. Depends, she said. He planning on learning? But Jaden wasn't interested in learning. He was only interested in winning, and that made what happened next even more important. All right, Devin called out. Last drill of the night. Optional sparring rounds. 2 minutes, light contact. You want to go? Step onto the mat. Most folks sat out. A few raised their hands. One pair of guys, a girl and a boy from the intermediate group, and Jaden. Of course, Jaden. He walked straight to the center mat and bounced on his toes, stretching his neck side to side. He cracked his knuckles like he was about to headline a pay-per-view fight. Anyone want this smoke? He asked, half joking, half serious. Nobody moved. Then slowly, Thelma stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just confident. Like someone who had done this walk 1,000 times before and didn't need to sell it to anybody. She held the borrowed gloves in one hand, wrapping the Velcro straps around her wrists. Jaden raised his eyebrows. For real? She nodded. You sure? I'm not going to take it easy this time. I don't expect you to. Devin stepped between them, unsure. Okay, let's set some rules. Light contact. 2 minutes. I'm watching. No heavy shots. Jaden grinned. You got it, coach. Thelma just tilted her head, tightening the strap on her right glove. Around the mat, a small circle started to form. Students stood up. Phones were being quietly readied. No one wanted to miss this. Jaden stepped into position, loose and cocky. He shadowboxed a little, playing it up. Thelma stood still. She didn't move like a fighter. Not yet. She looked like she was waiting for a bus. Touch gloves, Devin said. Jaden tapped hers quickly. She barely moved. Begin. Jaden circled her, light on his feet, feinting jabs, testing. Thelma didn't flinch. She watched his chest, not his hands. First jab, quick. She leaned back just enough, clean. Second move, a low kick aimed for her shin. She stepped out and rotated her hips slightly. Just a turn, smooth. Jaden's grin was gone now. He came in closer, threw a fast combo, left, right, then a spin move, clearly showing off. And that's when she moved. One pivot, one slip. Her hand shot forward, not hard, not loud, but it landed right in the middle of his chest. Controlled, direct. Jaden stumbled. Oof, someone whispered. He tried to recover, throwing a harder jab now, more aggressive, less control. Thelma parried it, then tapped his arm with her elbow, redirecting him. She stepped in with a quick sweep again, just like earlier, but this time she didn't follow through. She let him keep standing. Jaden was breathing heavier, his face flushed, his eyes darting. He swung again, this time with a little too much energy. She ducked under the swing and stepped behind him. Just a shift, not even a full turn. Jaden turned around, and she was already in stance. She didn't strike. She waited. That made it worse. Come on, he huffed. What, you scared now? No reply. He charged. Bad move. She sidestepped cleanly, hooked her leg around his ankle, and with one controlled push from her shoulder, thud. Jaden hit the mat for the second time that night. Gasps, a few hands over mouths. One voice, no one knew who, just said, damn. He sat up, blinking, not hurt, not injured, just outclassed. Devin stepped in. Time. Jaden didn't stand right away. He sat there, blinking up at the gym lights, like he was trying to figure out what just happened. Thelma pulled off the gloves and handed them to Devin. "Appreciate the workout," she said simply. She turned and walked back toward the bench, calm as ever. No celebration, no swagger. But every eye in the room was on her now, not with ridicule, not even surprise, respect. She'd earned it the hard way. But what she said next made them stop and listen for real, because it wasn't just about skill anymore. It was about something deeper. Jaden sat on the mat, breathing hard, red creeping into his cheeks. He wasn't used to losing, especially not like that. Not in front of his friends, not by someone the room had laughed at an hour ago. Especially not by a woman who looked like his grandmother. The room stayed quiet for a moment, just sneakers shifting on the floor and the low hum of the vending machine in the corner. Devin crouched beside him. "You all right?" Jaden nodded, but his face said otherwise. He wasn't hurt, not physically. His pride had taken the punch. He finally stood and walked back to the bench, eyes low. The swagger in his step was gone. The smirk, too. Meanwhile, Thelma sat down quietly. She pulled her jacket over her shoulders, took a sip from her old metal water bottle, and crossed her legs like it was just another Tuesday night. One of the girls in the class, Shanice, slim build, green belt, walked over to her. "Can I ask you something?" she said, soft. Thelma looked up. "Of course, baby." "That move you did, when he charged at you and you didn't panic, how'd you stay that calm?" Thelma smiled gently. "Because I've already been through worse." Shanice blinked. Thelma continued. "I've had men twice his size come at me in tournaments, and I've worked overnight ER shifts in places where the real fight wasn't in the ring. It was trying to stop someone from bleeding out on a metal table. That boy's energy?" She waved her hand lightly. "That wasn't pressure. That was noise." Shanice stood quiet for a second. Then she whispered, "You used to compete?" Thelma nodded. "Started training in '82. Okinawa. Learned from a man who didn't say much, but if you blinked, he'd have you on the floor before you even realized your foot moved." Another student had wandered close, pretending to tie his shoe, then another. Before long, half the class was standing in an informal half circle around her. Devin approached too, a folded towel in his hand. "Can I ask, why'd you come back? Tonight?" Thelma looked at him. "To remember." "Remember what?" She paused, looked around. Then she said, "That I'm still here, that I still know who I am, even if the world keeps telling me I shouldn't." Nobody said a word. Then she added, "I took care of my husband for 6 years before he passed. Parkinson's. He was the strongest man I ever knew. But after he was gone, I felt like the world just moved on. Like I had nothing left to give. I'd wake up in the morning and not recognize myself. So I came back here, to this mat. Because when my hands are up and my feet are grounded, nobody gets to tell me who I am." The room was silent again. But now, it wasn't awkward. It was real. Even Jaden, still sitting off to the side, lifted his head and watched her. Devin cleared his throat. "You ever think about teaching?" Thelma raised an eyebrow. "Seriously," he said, "you've got something different. I think a lot of folks in here could learn from you." She thought about it for a second. "I didn't come here to teach," she said, "but I won't walk away if someone's willing to learn." Devin nodded. "Then maybe we just figured out what this class was missing." From the back of the group, a hand went up. It was Jaden. Everyone turned. He walked over slowly, eyes down for a second, then looked Thelma in the face. "I was out of line," he said. "Earlier, I didn't think... I just..." She let him flounder for a few seconds before helping him out. "You thought I was weak." He nodded. "And now?" He hesitated. Then, "Now I know better." She studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. "Then we're good." He took it. But before anyone could leave the gym that night, Thelma had one more thing to say, and it was the reason this story stuck with everyone who witnessed it. The class officially ended 15 minutes earlier, but nobody had left. Some still stood around Thelma. Others lingered near the mat, replaying what they'd just seen like their minds needed time to catch up. Devin scratched the back of his head, pacing slowly as if trying to piece the whole evening together. I've been doing this for 12 years, he said, mostly to himself, and I've never seen someone move like that without warming up for at least half an hour. Thelma chuckled. You get to my age, you either stay ready or stay home. Jaden was now sitting beside her on the bench, not sulking, not fake smiling, just present and listening. That was new. He glanced at her. So, when did you get your black belt? First one? She asked, sipping from her water bottle. Back in '86. I've had a few since. Promotion stopped mattering after the third. A few people exchanged wide-eyed looks. You don't wear it, one guy said. Your belt, I mean. She looked at him. I didn't come to be seen. I came to see if I could still hold my own. Someone laughed softly under their breath, not at her, but in disbelief. The gym lights flickered slightly as the timer system began its shutdown routine, a signal the building would close in 30 minutes. No one moved. Finally, Devin pulled a chair and sat across from Thelma, his voice quieter now. I've seen a lot of people walk in here trying to prove something, mostly to themselves, but what you showed today, that wasn't just skill. She tilted her head. That was peace, he said. I saw it in how you moved. You didn't fight with ego. You fought with clarity. She nodded slowly. Because I've lived through worse than a punch. Someone nearby asked, like what? Thelma looked at the questioner, a young woman, arms crossed, curiosity plain on her face. She thought for a moment before answering. I was the only black nurse in my hospital's trauma unit in Tokyo during the early 90s. I worked 12-hour night shifts. Men twice my size tried to back me into corners. Patients spat at me when they realized I spoke English. I've sat beside dying strangers with no family, held the hands of children I couldn't save. You think Jaden puffing his chest is going to throw me off? Jaden lowered his head slightly, respectful now. The room was still again. Then Thelma smiled. But let me tell y'all something, she said. It's easy to throw punches when the lights are on and folks are watching. It's easy to hit hard when your friends are clapping. But the real fight? That happens when nobody sees you. When it's 3 a.m. and you're crying in your car because life won't let up. When your body's tired, your spirit's worn thin, but you still show up. That's the fight. And if you can survive that, ain't no kid on a mat gonna scare you. A soft murmur moved through the group. Heads nodded. No one looked at their phones. No one cracked a joke. Even the vending machine in the corner seemed to quiet down. Jaden stood. You ever train kids? Thelma raised an eyebrow. Why? He shrugged, then glanced around. 'Cause if you ever did, I'd bring my little brother. Her expression softened. Then I'd better sharpen up, she said, finally letting a smile break through. Devin clapped once like it had just dawned on him. You know what? We should do a special session. Once a month. Thelma teaches. Real-world training. Real talk. Someone shouted, I'd show up for that. Laughter, not mocking, not cold, real. Devin looked at her. You in? Thelma didn't answer right away. She looked down at her gloves, at the creases in her palms, the calluses that never truly faded. Then she looked up. If you're willing to learn, she said, I'm willing to show up. But it wasn't until they followed her outside that the full weight of her story finally landed. The sun was long gone, and the parking lot lights flickered overhead as the class slowly filtered out. Most nights, people left in a rush. Kids had curfews, parents had schedules, some just wanted to beat traffic. But tonight was different. They lingered. A few stood by their cars, some sat on their trunks or leaned against the hoods, waiting. Not because they were told to, but because something about Thelma Grant made you want to listen. Made you feel like if you didn't, you'd be missing something rare. She stood by her silver 2005 Buick, calmly rolling up the sleeves of her windbreaker. Jaden and Shanice followed her out. Devin came too. Others formed a quiet semicircle, not trying to make it awkward, but it kind of was. Everyone could feel there was more to her, something she hadn't said yet. Jaden broke the silence. So, you ever fight professionally? Thelma leaned against her car and shook her head. No, I never got paid to hit anybody. Came close once. There was a local league in San Diego back in '91. I trained with them for months, but then Harold got sick. Harold? Shanice asked. My husband, Vietnam vet. Stubborn as a mule. Made the best grits on this side of the Mississippi. He was my sparring partner, back when my knees didn't pop every time I bent him. She smiled gently. Parkinson's hit him fast. I quit everything, started working nights to pay for his treatment. She paused, looking off toward the trees beyond the parking lot. I lost more than just a husband when he died. I lost my rhythm, my reason to move. No one said a word. I didn't touch a mat for almost 12 years, she continued. And when I finally thought about coming back, I heard a voice in my head saying, "You too, old girl. Nobody want to see you out there huffing and puffing in your grandma shoes." Jaden looked down at her sneakers. "But you still showed up." Because something inside me said, "You've got more fight left, even if the only person you prove it to is yourself." A quiet breeze blew through the lot. Devin crossed his arms. "You did more than prove it." Thelma looked at him. "No," she said. "What I did tonight wasn't about proving anything. It was about reminding that we all got something the world don't see, not until we show them." She turned to Jaden. "You walk around with your chest out because you think confidence looks like loud talk and sharp moves. But the strongest people? They're quiet, patient. They let folks underestimate them." He nodded slowly. Then she turned to the rest. "Life don't always give you the belt when you've earned it. It don't hand you trophies for the nights you didn't quit. But those nights count more than any medal you'll ever get. You just gotta keep showing up. Keep moving, even when nobody claps for you." A car horn honked down the street, but nobody flinched. She finally moved to open her car door. Devin raised a hand. "Hey, before you go, you sure about that once-a-month class?" She looked over the top of her glasses. "Y'all still gonna talk behind my back?" A few people laughed. "No, ma'am," Shanice said quickly. "Not again." "Then I'll think about it." Jaden cleared his throat. "Ms. Grant? Yeah? I'm real sorry I judged you. That won't happen again." She nodded. "It will. Maybe not with me, but with someone else. Just promise me this time you'll catch yourself before your mouth opens." He nodded again, firm this time. She got in her car, engine humming to life. One last thing before she pulled off. She rolled the window halfway down and looked out. "Remember, you don't gotta be loud to be strong, and you don't have to be young to still matter." Then she drove off. And for a moment, nobody said anything. No jokes, no noise, just respect. Because what they saw that night wasn't just a lesson in karate. It was a lesson in dignity, in showing up when you're counted out, in remembering who you are. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever walked into a room and felt like you didn't belong, remember Ms. Thelma Grant, keep showing up. And when it's your turn, remind them exactly who they're dealing with. Now, who do you need to stop underestimating?